Well, we knew this was a possibility as we moved through the overnight hours that we would get severe weather. We talked about potential here for tornado warnings, and now we do have a tornado warning here. Tornado warning just issued for Crawford, Harrison, and the eastern part of Perry County. Let me show you where we have the warnings and the watch in effect. And there's been changes since I saw you last time. So we now have added a tornado watch for our entire area until 3 a.m. Lawrence, Jackson County, all of this was then overridden by the broad tornado watch. Tornado watch goes till 3 a.m., including the metro Louisville area. As far as where we have our thunderstorms, I'm going to take you over to Storm View HD, and Rick's going to be inspecting on Storm View 3D. So this is an area where we saw the storms start to intensify. The reason the Weather Service pulled the trigger on this one really quickly, my guess, is because we do know that if you can get a storm that is firing correctly and can take advantage, you have a very, very favorable setup with fuel and with wind energy to generate tornado. Now, I will say that this storm appears to be anvil to anvil, meaning it's head to head with another storm. So sometimes what you can see is this can weaken the storms a little bit, but it is not at this point, and it is something that we're going to need to watch closely. Where is the area of rotation? This area of rotation is about to move right over the Sulphur area. So if you're in Magnolia and Carefree, you need to be aware of that. Rick DeLuca, you've been looking at this storm on Storm View 3D. Storm View 3D we use a lot to detect where the rotation is and am I seeing any debris. You're looking west of Carefree right now. You just got the value of a new update. What are you seeing in terms of rotation right now?
So we are seeing rotation. When I refer to rotation, it's the greens and the reds that bank up against one another, which means we are seeing rotation. It's not terribly intense. And the newest scan, while the colors aren't popping off the screen, very, very bright, they are subtle and they are close enough that we are seeing definitely rotation inside the storm. Whether or not there's a tornado ongoing, it's hard to say. So what I'm going to do is go through several layers of data and information to analyze if in fact that's going to be true. So right now it's the velocity, which demonstrates the winds inside the storm. The next step is to go over to the correlation coefficient.
And correlation coefficient, you're just looking for, is there debris?
Right, and is there particles that are the same size or are they different sizes? If it was all rain, it would just be pink. So let's hope that's the case. Well, we are seeing, okay, a mixed signal here. So let's go back over to reflectivity just to make sure what we're looking at. We have the supercell, that's classic. The body up top around Carefree, crossing over 64, and that tail end. So Mark, I'm going to switch back over now.
And Rick, I'll go to the wall so I can keep my hand on the location you are.
Oh, perfect, okay.
That way we can kind of work at this together to look. So Rick's going to note a couple of things here, and we're going to work at this together. Rick, it does appear that the front one may be generating into a supercell as well, by the way. Notice we've got a hook here. So Rick and I are going to look. This is the area if a tornado was to form out of. Rick, let's go back to your rotation, which you had a moment ago. And I'll let you kind of go through here. So here's our rotation. We know that there's a little tail right here, and you can go back to that correlation coefficient, which you were alluding to earlier. I don't know, that could be just inflow into there, into the updraft.
Yeah, we don't have any
here.
Strong reflectivity, so it's...
And let's just go through that. Let's go back one more time, Rick. I'm just going to cup the area so we can see for sure.
There you go.
Yeah, so that is the inflow into that storm. So at least we know right now we're not seeing an indication that there is a tornado on the ground. But Rick, the rotation is notable.
For sure.
We don't have this is not there's a tornado on the ground. This is we've got conditions that are favorable. We will see if that rotation comes up or down. And this is the first one of the night.
It is the first one.
And so the Weather Service is probably, again, they didn't note anything in the chat. The warning was just issued. They're probably going to play this early. We're going to get a sense on where we stand. We know that when we look at our atmosphere, there's a little subtle sinking air.
Right.
And that subtle sinking air we know may work against these going crazy, but we don't necessarily have a textbook in terms of how does a little bit of a missing ingredient play into something like this. And that's really what we're going to see, I think, with this initial storm.
And we've seen those storms try to go, but they almost hit that wall, so they've been bouncing up and down, kind of rising, falling, rising and falling. And this is the one that's performed the best so far.
Right.
And Mark, we talk about severe weather parameters like SIG tornado, if we have the supercell composite and helicity, so many things that we go through and organize. And the atmosphere is very volatile. And we've said that many times so far this year. but if storms can go up in this sort of environment, then they can easily go strong to severe. Right. So this is one of those situations where you cannot turn your back on these storms simply because the atmosphere is so juiced up. We have the high heat, we have the humidity, and so many different factors coming together, but we are lacking the lift, and that is the take-home message that Mark's trying to give to you. No significant forcing, no strong cold front coming through, and that's why tomorrow's different than today too. Just a kind of little quick tease that we're going to be definitely detailing tonight at 10 and 11 o'clock, but tomorrow's a far different setup. And
you can see, by the way, the view from our Louisville camera is showing the thunderstorms. So I'm going to kind of row through a couple of our cameras because it's going to give you a sense of what the storms look like. The best view that we have is definitely going to come from our camera that's in the Corydon area. Remember, if you ever want to see these cameras, you can always look at them on our website, but that one is looking west from Louisville. You can very clearly see the updraft base on that storm. We are going to be watching closely. We do have other views of the storm. I'm going to show you from our Simpsonville camera. Rick, look at that. Sunset underneath the anvil of a tornado-warned storm.
Wow.
That is incredible looking. You'll notice how it spreads out. We call that the anvil. And then our camera that's going to be the closest to this is our Corydon camera right now. It's going to have to come over the hill just a little bit to give us a little bit more of a view. This is just due west of Corydon. I'm going to start to shift just a little bit west on our Corydon camera to see if we can get underneath this and see anything under the base of it. It is still over the hill, so we're not able to get a view of that base. Back over to Storm View HD right now. You can see two storms right now. We have a tornado-warned storm that's on the back. But we do have two storms here, and let me actually say three. All these storms are going right up against each other. So Storm 1, Storm 2, Storm 3. When these storms kind of bang heads like this, Rick, and go anvil to anvil, it's really important. What this means is the top of the storm, that is the exhaust, is running into another storm. Think about it like this. If you were to plug up the exhaust on your car, let's ignore the fact, obviously, that you'd have to, it can get really dangerous with carbon monoxide, but I just want to speak to this idea. If you plug up the exhaust of a car, your engine's going to shut off because it absolutely has to be able to push out the air. When storms are lined up back to back to back like this, it can disrupt the exhaust. And this is something that's really, really important to note. The only storm that has a tornado warning on it is the back edge storm. Rick, I'm going to step over to the wall real quick, and let's take a look at what we've got on Storm View 3D right now. So in terms of rotation, the one thing that you always want to do when you're assessing rotation is determine where the storm is located. So where? Back. You put your back to where the radar is and you point outward. So we know that the radar beam is coming in this way. What we would look for is the greens and the reds next to each other. You're like, Mark, there's a ton of them. Correct. But they have to be parallel to the beam. So if we're looking this way, we would need to see the red and the green on top and bottom. We are not seeing that right now. So is there some subtle rotation in this? Maybe. Is there significant rotation in this? Not. If the rotation exists, it's right here. So this would be about 4 miles to the west-southwest of the Carefree area. Rick, let's briefly go back over to reflectivity, and then again, I want to go through that exercise. We'll do it together here and look, are we seeing anything that would indicate tornado? So in terms of the hook, here's the tail of it. Let me know, Rick, when we're at the current image.
You're current.
Okay, so I'm going to put my hand here. Rick, let's go back to rotation here briefly. We've got the hook on this thunderstorm. Our area of rotation is right here, not overly intense. And let's look briefly to see if we notice any debris in this area. What we're seeing here looks like, again, inflow into the storm. Rick, looks like a little bit of a hail core here right north of the Carefree area. But what I'm seeing, to me, does not say necessarily that there is a tornado on the ground right now. This says to me, there's some rotation in the storm. It doesn't say to me it's intense rotation.
No, absolutely agree. And so this tornado warning goes until 9:15, which means we have another 20 minutes or so inside this warning. The nature of the atmosphere, obviously, it's on edge. It's simply put, simply because we have all these different ingredients out there, but this storm is definitely struggling. I mean, usually when these things go up, they can start to explode and they break away from some of these barriers or things that are holding them back. But in this scenario, the struggle is still existent because one scan, it looks good, and the next scan, it doesn't. I can show you that specifically by going over to velocity. So I'll go back a couple of scans. Rotation right there at that particular time doesn't look good at all. And then you forward back again, and it kind of regains a little bit of strength. The colors get a little bit brighter. So we still have that rotation, and we are also looking at a storm that's about 1,800 feet off the ground. So still actually a good height to see if we have any rotation.
And we just got a report from Milltown Police Department that there are trees and power lines down per a caller in Sulphur. So this storm appears to have done at least some level of damage. Whether this is damaging winds or a tornado, you know, when we get through this, we will find out for sure. But the area of rotation, and I'll show you on a different source here, went directly over the Sulphur area. So the core of that storm went directly over Sulphur, and we're getting reports of damage now. So I think it's very, very important to note that you need to use caution on this storm.
Yeah.
Whether it's straight line winds or a tornado, all said, we will find that out. And I'm just going to check my social channels just to make sure that we're not getting any pictures that are showing anything like a tornado touchdown. So I'm going to briefly go through. And if you do, by the way, see anything and you can safely capture, you can always find me on Facebook or Twitter. It's very easy to catch us. And I don't have any video of anything that would show touchdown or anything like that. This is not that far off of our camera that's in the Corden area. So once it gets maybe about 6 miles, 8 miles further to the east, we should get a better view of this. But let's do a quick track on if there's a tornado, where would it be going? So if there's a tornado, where it would be going. I'm going to give you a track on this, and Rick's going to walk you through some of these locations on where it would be.
Okay, so obviously keeping a close eye on Sulphur because that's where we have some of that damage that was just reported. So where is that same core now, and where will it be going? So here's where we're focusing in. Between Magnolia and Beechwood. This is just south of the I-64 corridor. A lot of people are traveling 64 east and west, so this is not what you wanted to see, is a storm going over a road that definitely has a lot of traffic and density. So as this goes off to the east, it will be in the White Cloud area in about 20 minutes, give or take a few. And Moberly, if this can indeed hold together, then you would be the next one underneath this tornado-warned storm. It's about halfway through the polygon right now, which means if this trend continues, the Weather Service will have to decide if they want to go down the line and extend this warning. You can see this is actually going to cruise down I-64, which could get very close to Louisville in a far different fashion. The intensity probably won't be there, but it's something we have to prepare for. If you live in Louisville, we're under a tornado watch until 3 o'clock in the morning. It's a good time to have your friends and family just aware, like, hey, in a couple hours, we might have to move, or maybe in a couple of minutes for some of you, especially if you are in northern Harrison County. So watching this storm in motion near this lone supercell with other supercells off to the north, but obviously they are far weaker. This one is on the southern edge. And these storms on the southern edge have a lot more fuel to fuel with. They're not competing to absorb and to eat some of that energy. So right now along 64, north of Leavenworth, we have a tornado warning. Damage has been done out in Sulphur, but we don't have exact say in whether or not there's an actual tornado on the ground, if it was straight line winds or tornadic in nature. But what's the difference? Damage has been done, trees are down, which means you have to take the storm seriously. Tornado warning for Crawford, Harrison County until 9:15 p.m. The other threat, which we probably haven't mentioned too much, is for some hail. You may see some hail up to 1 inch in diameter. So you go fish in your pocket, pull out a quarter, and you could have stones of ice falling from the sky that size. That could do some damage to your roof and your car, and you obviously do not want to be outside in that sort of situation. So for now, if you are in Crawford, Harrison County, need you to be in your safe place. We've seen some damage being done, and we don't want to be, hearing about a tree falling in anyone's house or anything. So get away from those windows and just remain there until we finally get a new scan and give you the green light, the thumbs up, and say, okay, you're now good to go. You can go back and continue your evening.
And I did look at some of the rotation aloft here, and I got to say it is actually a little bit better than it is near the ground. The rotation itself is basically on top of the Carefree, Indiana area. So if you live in Carefree, Indiana, now's the time to take your tornado safety precautions, which would mean downstairs. I need you to be underneath something. I need you in the center part of the house, and you've got to keep away from windows. And this is approaching our camera in the Corydon area, which I'm going to briefly take a look at to see if we've got a better view. There is the storm now approaching Corydon. So the storm obvious view here. From our downtown camera, you can see the storm taking up the entire sky. This is the 2 supercell thunderstorms in from Simpsonville. Here's the scope. So the scope of that storm, it is impressive. What you see is the storm expanding upward, and then it hits basically the top of the weather portion of the atmosphere in terms of where it can go. And when it hits that, it starts to spread out. So you can actually see there what we call the anvil. Notice how it spreads out on the corner of the screen there. That is the severe thunderstorm. Our camera that's going to give us the best view of this, though, is going to be at a Corydon, and we're going to see again if we do indeed get a tornado on this, or whether one did occur. We just don't know for sure. What I can tell you is aloft, we're definitely seeing some rotation. I'm going to head over to the weather wall real quickly. Rick, I want to look at a little bit what we refer to as normalized rotation.
Sure.
It's not greens versus red. This makes somewhat a little bit easier sometimes, because what we're looking at is the rotation. Generally, what we use on this particular graphic, and we say this a lot, is green means go. So when you see greens here inside of the blue, it's normally rotation that's intensifying. What would be intense? When you get into the reds and the pinks and the magentas, it is a serious concern. So here's this current radar image, Rick.
Yep.
Let's just take it back a couple of scans and see if we've had any change in terms of the intensity of the rotation. Rick's going to take it back, and you can see when it goes through sulfur, and one could successfully argue that the rotation has stayed somewhat similar. So if it did do a little bit of damage in sulfur, I do think it's fair to say that this could indeed produce near the Carefree area. At least one of the positives that we're seeing. So we're not seeing the rotation get more intense. But we need to start to think down the line. You know, Rick mentioned we need to be thinking about further towards Louisville. But if you're in Corydon right now, if the storm holds its intensity, it does look struggling, but it's going to get close. It's probably going to go on the northern side of Corydon. From this perspective, again, as I view the storm, the hook on it is not as pronounced as it was. How high are we looking at echo tops here, Rick? How tall is this thunderstorm going? I'm going to guess maybe 43, 46?
44.
Okay, so we're at about 43,000 feet.
And there was a wall cloud reported in Carefree, by the way.
Okay, wall cloud was reported in Carefree, Indiana. Should be within view of our camera in Corydon here shortly. Tornado warning continues until 9:15 tonight. Storms up to 43. The big storms, the big bear storms will go as high as 65. 43 is not a small storm. It's also not a monster. This is a positive. And again, as we look at rotation here, rotation at the surface, you know, it almost looks a little bit outflow dominated, maybe a little bit, and maybe we could see maybe a little bit of RFD, which could, you know, enhance rotation a little bit. Overall right now, we know that we've got a wall cloud on it. We know that there was damage done in the sulfur area. As I look at this, you know, I still don't see something that would end up in the area, Rick, of what we saw, let's say, in Prospect or Jeffersonville. This still just doesn't look like a storm of that intensity right now. And even when you look at lightning, I mean, there's just not a ton of lightning even in it.
There's not. I mean, when we look at those tower cams, if you want to pull up the Corydon one, typically you would see the flashes going left and right all over the place. And there's the vantage point right now, looking at the tornado-warned storm from our view in Corydon, which is just off to the east of that area. Right now, it's moved out of Carefree. So I know in Carefree we had a couple spotters report that they saw a wall cloud, a lot of rotation. I just want to let you know in Carefree that rotation has now moved off to the east. So you are in a safer place. If you went down your tornado safe place, then you can come out now. It's not an issue. It's off to the east of you. But like you mentioned, Mark, there is not a lot of lightning.
There really isn't.
Which is very surprising.
I'm going to go back over Storm View HT, and I you know, there's just not a lot of lightning strikes on this. It looks like it's struggling. I do think it's worth, is this the only game in town? And I would say something I always say, since you ask, yes, there is no other tornado-warned storm. And this is the game right now. We have a shower that has no lightning whatsoever near Borden, and we've got a couple lightning strikes on this storm that's near the Carefree area. Beyond that, it just looks like it's not as intense as it once was. And you know what? This is an interesting one because I will say this much. This never really has shown very intense rotation, but at the same time, it is very clearly a supercell thunderstorm. Moving off to the east out of the Carefree, Indiana area does mean that we need to be starting to think about Corydon. 14 minutes from now in the Moberly area, which puts it in Corydon, around 18 minutes from now and 29 minutes from now in the Mott Station area. So if you're in Corydon, it's going to go just on the northern side of Corydon where the area of rotation is/was. I will say that rotation right now, it does exist. Are we looking at those traditional really bright and really bright green and reds next to each other? Remember, the radar beam is coming in from here. So if there was areas of rotation, we would look for the greens and reds to be stacked on top of each other, and that is simply not the case right now. The greens and reds are not in the locations that we would expect them to be. So it does appear that the storm is struggling some. The tornado warning is in effect until 9:15, but as noted, it just doesn't look overly intense right now. I'm going to go back over to our recording camera as we look into the thunderstorm. This would at least give us an idea if the core is collapsing. So you can see it, just an incredible view, though, for what it's worth of the storm. I'll show you what you're looking at. This right here is the edge of the updraft, the air that's rising in this thunderstorm. You can see it then starts to spread out aloft in what we refer to as the anvil. And if there was to be any area of rotation on it, it would be appearing right here. There we go. We just got a lightning strike, but you can see they're not ultra common. We haven't seen a lot. It is a very isolated supercell.
Yeah.
So in this regard, isolated supercells can be more powerful than a supercell with a neighbor. Why? Because it gets to use all of the energy by itself. This is really following a lot of what the data had indicated on this, and that is storms going up. You would think in an environment with very warm, humid conditions, in an environment that has exceptional amounts of wind energy, that everything would go crazy. But the reality is that we can clearly tell that there are limiting factors. Some of that may be the dry air in the mid-levels, and some of that may be the sinking air aloft. While not overly impressive, these supercell thunderstorms, while you think of them as bears, they also can be a little bit fragile in the sense that in environments that are perfect, they flourish.
Right.
And they become animals and are impossible to stop. But when you have something that may be opposing them, you can see at times they don't just go crazy. They can struggle. And this storm right now, while we have had some damage in the Sulphur area, just looks like it doesn't really have its act together.
No, I mean, it's crazy how you can have like all these certain things lined up, but then just the one element that's missing or inhibiting, and it shuts down the entire thing. Nonetheless, there are some strong winds showing up. We're getting some gates, which are probably around 30 to 32 knots. So you could get some. Height? That's at 16,000.
1,600.
1,600, I mean, 1,600. So, I mean, you could get a 30, maybe 40 mile per hour wind gust just to the east of Carefree. And here's the other interesting fact. So, the actual storm will quickly move out of the polygon.
I know, they got to make a decision.
They got to make a decision. You know, perhaps they may go severe thunderstorm with a tornado possible tag. But I do think they may kind of lower some of the verbiage simply because a lot of the rotation that we're seeing is aloft and perhaps not so much down at the surface, Mark.
And I'm going to step over to the wall real quick because I think, you know, based on what you even mentioned there, let's go through a couple of tilts here and let's talk about height. So let's start off at the ground level here. So Rick mentioned we're looking at 1,600 feet above the ground. This is the closest that the radar has in terms of its interface to the ground. Why? Why isn't it looking at 10 feet off the ground? The radar cannot look directly straight out. How come? It'll run into trees. The beam will run into downtown buildings. We need to make sure that that radar beam gets above there so we can see. So how do we deal with that? We tilt the radar half a degree up. That's the lowest scan, and that allows us to make sure the beam goes over downtown buildings, make sure it goes over trees, and we can see. So it means that the farther you get away from the radar, the higher you're looking up in the atmosphere. This is not far away, so we're looking within 1,000 feet of the ground. Rick, let's go up a couple of tilts on the radar here. Let's go up a little higher. Maybe a little area of rotation here. There it is. So there's our area of rotation, and this is higher. What are we at in terms of height here?
This is 1.3.
So
the height is
so Rick's going to
35,000. 3,500 feet, excuse me.
3,500. So we're looking at about a little bit over half a mile up. So what we note is the storm has rotation in the mid-levels, but it's struggling at times to get down to the ground. What we do know is that there's some damage in sulfur, so it may have briefly made that move down to the ground, but it is more elevated right now. And here you can see an area of rotation. And Rick, let's go back down to the lower tilt here at the surface, and we can see that we just don't have it. We don't have it there. So the storm itself there's the new radar scan update. A little bit of an area of rotation here. This is going to go just on the northern side of Corydon. While you're not in a tornado warning, Corydon, I would say prepare yourself. Prepare yourself maybe for if you need to go into that place. Have the dog ready, have the family together. And by the way, one of the things we added here is a little bit of a scan on the corner. So this is easy. Grab your phone, take a picture, and you can see where the scan is. What that's going to do is allow you to download the WDRB News app or WDRB Plus. Why? Because if you have to go into your safe spot, we don't want you to get cut off from being able to get the information. Rick, we've got one gate, and you and I definitely think alike, my friend. What are you seeing on that gate? I'm going to take a guess there. I'm going to guess that's about 42 miles an hour.
44.
Okay, so we're pretty close in terms of what we're looking at. And Rick, you mentioned earlier that this was closer to 35, so it looks maybe a little bit stronger in terms of that. And as far as the reflectivity of this, the normal view of this, it does appear that it may be getting itself organized a little bit again. It has a better hail core now.
Yeah, and aside from lightning, which we typically use to gauge the intensity of a storm, the hail is another great way. So if you see those purples start to pop, you know the storm is starting to gain some intensity. I'm going to roll back just a couple scans, and that's just the latest scan.
And I'm going to show you, by the way, on StormView HD. But Rick, speaking to what you just mentioned, now we've got a few more lightning strikes on this. So we may be seeing the thunderstorm getting its act together a little bit. So now is the time to be in court and thinking, if I do go under a tornado warning, am I prepared for that? We've got our camera in Corydon. It's looking towards the west right now. It does look like the storm is more intense than it was a couple of moments ago. I'm going to view this a little bit more towards the west-northwest because that is the way that the storm, if there is an area rotation, it would be. It's going to go right north of our camera. We had a tornado earlier in the year that was behind some trees near our Corydon camera, and this is the second time in maybe 3 weeks that we've had a tornado-warned storm very close to the Corydon camera. In terms of looking at the surface interface, it's tough to see because you're trying to look over a hill right now. So it's nothing as conclusive here that would say one way or the other. Tornado warning's in effect for another 5 minutes. We'll see what the Weather Service decides on this. In terms of choices, they could go severe with tornado possible. There we go. They just issued the new tornado warning.
Okay.
So the new tornado warning just issued. Let me get the time on that and how long that thing is going to last. Weather Service is obviously playing it safe on this one. And again, I just want to say I understand, and I'll tell you why I understand. Because we have some damage in the sulfur area. We do have mid-level rotation, and sometimes driving mid-level rotation down to the ground doesn't take a whole lot. The interesting thing here is you have a tornado warning in effect until 9:45, which, just to note for our production guys, takes us within 15 minutes of the newscast. The tornado warning until 9:45, but we have a tornado warning, Rick, and we only have 3/4 of an inch of hail, which is not even severe level. It speaks to the idea that even if there's somewhat of an inhibiting factor, there still is, you can't argue the fact that there is a lot of rotation in the atmosphere and there is a lot of fuel. Yes, there is a little bit of subsidence in the atmosphere, but I think we're seeing here that it's not taking our, Oklahoma type supercells. No. This is what I would refer to more as a miniature supercell. It does have a little bit of lightning on it, but it's not the beast we saw to the west, but it is still enough to produce a tornado warning on it until 9:45. And let's look at the rotation here. I'm going to go back over to StormView 3D where Rick's looking at. The rotation here at the surface, there's nothing that screams out to me tornado warning on it in terms of damaging tornado. But I think based on what we just caught a little bit ago, I think we need to at least acknowledge the concept here that this did produce some damage near the sulfur area, and it may have occurred in between radar scans, and it doesn't take much. Our atmosphere absolutely is supportive of severe weather. It's not a night that I think you're talking about mega warnings, But do I think we're going to get warnings out of this? You know, obviously I mentioned it in my Facebook Live, which we rolled into this. Yes, I thought there were going to be tornado warnings, and I even mentioned, you know, I thought we could get a couple of these. There are some ingredients that are not, or that are slightly not favorable, but there is an abundance of ingredients that are. Right. And it again means that you can get spin-ups here. So if we could, guys, Rick and I are going to spend some time. I'm going to go to the weather wall, Rick, and I want, if we could, corner our coordinate camera, because it's going to be getting closer and closer to the coordinate camera. And this is going to allow us to get a view of this storm. So we can always double box if we want to as we view the coordinate camera. Rick, let's briefly look through reflectivity, rotation. Am I seeing a tornado on the ground? So I want to start a little bit wider because I still want to get the picture of what's occurring on the storms to the north and if there are interactions occurring anymore. So the storms that are near Sellersburg are struggling right now. I'm not impressed with what I'm seeing here. We had anvil to anvil on 2 separate storms a little bit earlier. I believe the back supercell is now starting to take over. Why does that matter? It may cause this area of rain to go away, and if that's the case, it would become a more dominant, stronger storm. There are indications now that it may be trying to do that. In terms of the hook, while it isn't as notable as it was earlier, there still is no question that there is a little bit of hook here. This is about 6 miles to the west-northwest of the Corydon area. And yes, this is obviously along 64. It is going to cross 64, and it's probably going to do it in central Harrison County. So, you know, understand when you go 64, you go up that hill towards Corydon. That could make it very difficult to view here. In terms of rotation, I want to see if there's anything here that would scream that we've got a tornado on the ground. Here is our area of rotation right now. There's a new scan that just came in. So this now is about 4 miles to the west-northwest of Corydon. Let's see if we've got any area that would show debris or something that would concern us. You're like, oh, we've got an area of blue. Well, is it raining in this area? Rick's going to switch it back over. We're not really seeing any rain. I believe is getting better organized. 2 reasons why. Do you notice this little green arc here? What that is, what we call is a rear flank downdraft. So what this traditionally does as a storm tries to spin up is this wraps around into the storm. So in my opinion, over the next 6 to 12 minutes, we need to watch very, very closely. This may cause a spin up of a tornado. This may cause that rotation to intensify. And Rick, I think if you go back one scan, you can see the hook has become notably more defined as the rear flank downdraft is starting to wrap around that storm. In terms of rotation, have we gotten a new scan on rotation levels? I want to see. The rotation looks mostly displaced, but there is some right in this area here. Rick, if we could, let's just go up 1 tilt because it's been more evident on our higher tilts. Yeah, there's the area rotation right here. So this is going to go north of Corydon. That's fortunate for you. If you're in the Crandall area, get ready. Storm's about, I'm going to say 15 minutes out from you. Think about what you're going to do, where you're going to go. Downstairs, underneath something. Move to the center part of your house and keep away from windows. It's easy to remember this. I use the word duck. When I started doing school talks about 25 years ago, I thought that it was easy to remember. What do you do when a storm comes? Well, you duck down. Downstairs, underneath something, center of the house, keep away from windows. What if you don't have a basement? I will tell you this. I have surveyed more tornadoes than I would like to count, and I will tell you that I've seen, I'll use Henryville as an example. In 2012, I saw one of the home in Henryville, and this is an EF4, a very violent tornado, and every wall was torn down. Every wall was torn down, and you know what was left? Is a little closet in the middle of the house. Why? Because those walls are really close to each other and it gives more rigidity and structure. And second, you let the outside walls take the damage. You don't want to take it yourself. This is extremely important when you get into the center of the house. And Rick, you know, we've talked about this, both of us, because you kind of went through your house to try to find some weak spots and strengthen them. But if you keep the roof on the house and you keep the walls standing, your house is stronger. And if you get into the middle of that house, if a 2x4 is firing, let it fire through the outside wall. You know, the only thing that matters if there was a tornado is you. Everything else is replaceable. Get into that center part of the house.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of underestimate the fact that these storms can pick up like 2x4s, twigs, and anything and make them projectiles.
Absolutely.
And we've seen them being lodged into sides of concrete, into homes, and that is one of the most dangerous aspects of a tornado. And people really kind of disregard the fact that it creates these almost like projectiles and missiles with some of the debris. So obviously that's a concern. You want to stay away from windows, be in the inside of your house. And if you have a basement, it's obviously the best place to be. Underground is always going to be the safest. And I did put a tracker on the actual area of rotation in that as it moved off to the east. So Mark mentioned Crandall. Down the line from that, also Georgetown as well as Duncan. If this storm maintains intensity in about 25 minutes, well, then you and your family and your pets may have to go down into your safe place. It looks like, Mark, this is going to be very close to the northern edge of Louisville, probably staying on the Indiana side.
And that's the elephant in the room, right?
I know. I mean, it's going to be so close. So listen, this is one where if you're in Louisville, I'm going to ask that you stay with us because this one is going to be very close to downtown. I don't want to say yes or no on this one because it's going to be razor thin and exactly where this storm tracks. But it is going off to the east, and there's a shot of Corden. Mark, has that come over the hill yet, or?
So what we see on the right there, if there's a lowering, I think it's straight in front of us. The interesting thing again is you have a thunderstorm that's not producing an excessive amount of lightning, which makes it somewhat challenging to see into the storm and what's actually going on in there. I'm going to change view here. We're looking almost northwest now out of the Corden area, so I'm going to drift our camera a little bit further to the north. This is looking due northwest. What is on the right there, it's tough to say if that's a lower cloud. Yeah, there's clouds moving there. So there's not really anything there to me that speaks necessarily severe or tornado on the ground. Here's the view from Louisville, the storms to the west. This is the view from Simpsonville, and you can see what looks like a mushroom cloud. That is the storm that's out there. In terms of our rotation, you know, it's interesting to note, by the way, the Weather Service did note that there is a rear flank downdraft hitting around this, and now we have a second area of rotation. This is a different storm. This one's coming up intensity fast. So I'm going to go, Rick, this one, this is definitely stronger rotation. So this is the northern storm. Guys, this one take seriously. This rotation is much more intense. Memphis exit, Sellersburg exit. It's going to go right in between. Greens, reds here are sharp. Rick, what are we looking at on either side here? And this is nearly gate to gate. I'm going to guess we're at around 70 right here on the pink where my finger is. 74. Okay, other side, I'm going to guess is what, 10 miles an hour? Yep. So we've got potentially about 85 miles an hour rotation, 90 miles an hour. What height are we at? Going to guess again.
This is about 2,000 feet.
Okay, so 2,000 feet. Let's go through briefly looking at a couple things because the rotation has come up significantly and fast on this. Rick, I want to look at reflectivity because I want to check to see if we've got any debris here. So this storm is a miniature supercell. It is not a really tall storm, but the rotation has come up markedly on it over the last few minutes. Let's look at correlation coefficient. It's going to be tough on this one. It really is going to be tough. This is where there could be an area, the area of rotation. It shows a little bit of a hole in there, but and there's the new scan here.
That should help.
That doesn't scream that there is a tornado on the ground. Let's go back over to reflectivity briefly because I want to see that little hole there. The area of it's definitely strengthening. If you're in Memphis, Indiana, you're going to be on the northern side. If you're 3 miles south of Memphis, be careful. Be careful. The storm is intensified enough that it may be able to produce a tornado in the next few moments. Tornado warning is in effect for this storm here. It's going to cross between about 3 miles south of Memphis along I-65. This is two storms right now that are on major interstates within our area. Storm's going to cross between Memphis and Sellersburg along 65. Here's the view from Storm View HD, and you can see, you know, you're talking about if you're near the Perry Crossing area, you got to get in your tornado safe spot. You got to get in there right now. I would tell you, I think that this is something that I hope that we've earned together over the years, as I don't tell you to do it unless I'm really concerned. I really don't. I don't want you guys to be running down to your storm cellar unless it's necessary. I will tell you, I'm nervous about this one. It's about to go across the Perry Crossing area. 13 minutes from now, it'll be in Charlestown. Charlestown. Let's get things together. Let's get down to our tornado safe spot right now. The rotation's increasing. It may very well generate a tornado or may even have one near the Perry Crossing area. You've got about now 12 minutes until it gets into your area at Charlestown. Let's not play around with this one. Let's get ourselves into our tornado safe spot. I had so many people after the Jeffersonville tornado say, I'm glad I made that decision. Make the right decision. Don't put yourself in a dangerous situation. That rotation is right on top of the car. and the Bennettsville area. This is right north on Highway 111, right north of the Bennettsville area, about to go through Perry Crossing and the Bennettsville area. This could be producing a tornado at any moment. Rick, since we're doing the scope, let's just go back to our other storm that's north of the Corridon area. I don't want to neglect this. We do have 2 tornado warnings within our area right now. We do have damage that occurred earlier near Sulphur. We don't know if this damage was by straight line winds or a tornado, but on the back edge of this storm, if there's an area of rotation right now, it is directly north of Corridon. Rick's going to scope inside there and he's going to hunt to see if we've got anything over here. Yeah, there's the area of rotation right here, and that's definitely it. It's clearly not as strong as the rotation on the northern storm. These are the only 2 supercells that we have in our area right now. But if you're in the Crandall area, this area of rotation is about to go over you. And Rick, this is an area, while it hasn't produced damage in the recent, we know that in Sulphur it did produce damage. And to be honest, I don't think it would be fair to say that the intensity of rotation was any different than what it is right now.
No, I absolutely agree. In fact, it's crazy that that northern storm has the best rotation that we've seen so far today. So for now, we're watching the rotation in that one. Mark, you have a quick report?
Yeah, so just got a report out of Clark County, Indiana, per 911 near the Deer Lake Drive area that there's a tornado on the ground. Just got a report of a tornado on the ground. That one is about to head over the Memphis, just south of Memphis. And I'm going to go over to Storm View 3D. Rick, we mentioned green equals go. You've got it up there. That rotation is stronger. This is the Clark County storm. 9/11 report coming out of Clark County of a tornado on the ground near Deer Lake Drive. This is the storm that we've got. You have got to take your tornado safe precautions near Perry Crossing. This area of rotation, I'm not going to say confirmed per se. I don't know the report. I don't know the person that made the report. All I can say is a 9/11 caller reported that a tornado was on the ground on this storm in Clark County, and this is about to go over Perry Crossing in Indiana. So this is potentially a life-threatening situation, and you need to take this seriously.
So you said Deer Lake Drive?
Deer Lake Drive.
Okay, so Covered Bridge Road, another one that's the rotation is basically impeding on you. Out ahead of it is Canvas Man Road. If you live on that road, you need to be in your safe place now. The same applies to Fairview Road. And just got a new scan from NROTS, and just to give you a quick overlook, NROT takes away all the clutter. So that way we can really focus in on where we have the rotation, and we've actually lost that signature. I'll scan back one, green inside the blue. We say green means go. That's when you run to your safe place. And we've actually seen that little core of green come down a little bit. So that could speak to intensity, but this is just one product. What we'd like to do is analyze this on different levels. I'm going to zoom out, and it does look like the rotation has come down quite a bit as well.
Which is good. I mean,
which is great news. I mean, look at that right there. And these things are going up and down so fast.
And that's the thing I think that we have to be clear on. What we're seeing now is what appears to be at least quick spin-ups. It speaks to the volatile nature in the atmosphere. There are some things that are working against. Maybe it gets in a moment where it gets a little bit more intense. And I'll tell you, on those pops of intensity, these can drop tornadoes very quickly. You know, we've said this is a volatile atmosphere that these are in. There is obviously a little sinking air that's trying to defend, but in reality here, the rotation has come up and down. And Rick, you saw that. In 2 scans, we went from much more significant rotation right there. Very troublesome there.
Scary, yeah.
To what is... It just tanked a lot.
And honestly, just in time before it arrived to I-65. You know, let's hope this maintains this lowering trend. But also, like you said, Mark, we can't ignore the fact that we have 2 storms in our area, and the other still tornado warned, which is now bearing down on Georgetown. That will remain south of Greenville, but it's a supercell. You see the body, you see the hook on the edge of it, and it looks like we have some more info from the Weather Service. Yeah,
by the way, multiple 911 callers now are reporting a tornado on the ground in Perry Crossing. So, guys, this is a life-threatening situation if you live near the Perry Crossing area. Tornado is, at least per multiple callers, is crossed I-65 near the Perry Crossing area and is heading towards Charlestown. Charlestown, get into your tornado-safe location. Don't take a risk. Is the data showing a little bit of a weakening trend? Sure. Is it possible that it's strengthened in the minutes since we've gotten that scan? Yes. Is it worth playing with your life or your family's life or your kid's life? It is not. Get into your tornado-safe location. multiple reports, and they're now going tornado observed. So the Weather Service now has changed over to the purple warning, which means a tornado is confirmed and on the ground near the Perry Crossing area, heading towards Charlestown, Indiana. I'm going to head over to the wall real quickly. You know, the amazing thing about this is you have a structure on this that when you look at it, it doesn't look ultra impressive, and yet we've got multiple reports of a tornado on the ground. I'm going to head over to the weather wall here real quickly, and we're going to look at the storm and where it is going. Perry Crossing is where the potential tornado is on the ground right now. Did we just say that it appears that it's weakened somewhat on radar? Sure, we did absolutely say that. Is it possible that in the 2 minutes since we got that radar scan that it's strengthened some? Yes. The fact that we've got a confirmed tornado on the ground, you don't play. You don't play around with this stuff. The insanity of this whole thing, tornado on the ground, not a single lightning strike. Not one. So the amount of rotation available in the atmosphere is impressive, to say the least. So the area right now is going to be Runyon Town 23 minutes from now and 27 minutes now from in the Rolling Hills area. Here's our area of rotation. It is now crossed over I-65. It's right over Perry Crossing as we speak. If you're wondering, by the way, what the purple here is, radar is radar. It is a tool that we have. What this means is the signal to noise ratio. Without going into complexity of some of the physics and how these radars work, it means that the signal to noise has dropped below a threshold. That means the data is unreliable. That's why we're not seeing any greens in this area. We've got what we refer to as ND, or no data, because the signal strength is not enough, the signal to noise ratio, to verify that these are actually accurate. But we know that the area of rotation has crossed over Perry Crossing, and it is going to go just on the northern side of Charlestown. If you're in Charlestown, take your tornado safety precautions immediately. Weather Service has gone tornado confirmed on this. I mentioned it earlier, but it's worth mentioning again. Where do you go? Downstairs, underneath something, center part of the house, and keep away from windows. And I'm going to show you where the area of rotation is. Rick, let's toggle between. I'll tell you why we can't use what we call correlation coefficient to show whether we have a tornado for sure. We're going to make a move back over here to rotation. So here's the area of rotation, and Rick, let's toggle on reflectivity here briefly. And so what you're going to notice is here is where, so if there's a hole, one of those circular holes in the debris, it would be in this location. So Rick, let's briefly go back over to correlation coefficient and see if there's a circle hole. That is possible that is showing debris. There's the new scan. Not as impressive. We do have some traffic cameras around the area. Mike, where are we looking? Perry Crossing. So we've got a traffic camera at a Perry Crossing. Let's take this behind me and see if we have a view. Does anybody know which direction we're looking on this? North-south? I'm guessing we're looking north-northeast would be my guess. I think this is I-65. Seeing some flashes there. I don't know if the flash is the camera's iris resetting. There goes some vehicles underneath. Can't tell if there's anything here that would speak to a tornado on the ground right now. But at least our storm, we know, has a confirmed tornado per 911 callers, and we got a lot of these reports out of the 911 dispatch in Clark County. Again, I don't think that we can say whether there's a tornado on the ground at this point. And Rick, you're kind of sifting through the National Weather Service. Have we seen any updates since the 911 callers noted a tornado on the ground?
We have a report of some light debris across I-65 just north of Perry Crossing. Okay,
and that's the area where it crossed. It is mind-blowing to me that this little thing, Rick, I'm curious. Echo tops on this thing. I mean, this is so small, but it produced a confirmed tornado. What do you?
Those are below 15,000 feet.
I mean, it is crazy that something that is not very strong is producing a tornado, but it is real. Because we have multiple reports of this, and as Rick noted, we've got debris. As he said, it was light debris, but we have debris on I-65. Let's go back to the rotation here. Looks like we got a new scan. This is the area we're watching. You know, Rick, I think it's let's toggle back a little bit, because I think you're going to get a good sense of what it was versus what it is right now. And let's go into the now. Is this the current scan, by the way?
No, we're just two back.
Okay, let's center it up if we could, so that we can get a sense of what it looked like and what it is like right now. And I assume, are you on base? There we go. So are we on base or are we on storm relative? Okay, so here's the area of rotation that was significant, and let's just move into the now. All of a sudden then it strengthens, Weather Service puts out a tornado warning, crosses I-65, and the rotation looks like it is weakened off quite a bit. But, you know, this is the second time tonight that what is not showing an insane amount of rotation appears to have tornadoed. And it's a 15,000-foot storm. I mean, I can see it on your face. It is mind-blowing that what is looks like a little rain shower hasn't produced a tornado.
Because you look at reflectivity, we do it every single day.
Every day.
And we look for classic textbook examples of what a supercell is. And while it's a supercell, don't get me wrong, it's just a really weak, shallow supercell. It's not one that's shooting way up in the atmosphere, 40, 50,000 feet. It is very, very short. Even the DBZ, the reflectivity, that is not ultra strong. But yet again, we had sulfur, which experienced some damage, and now near the Timberfield Court area, Perry Crossing, Indiana, another instance where we have a reported tornado, which did go confirmed, and there's some light debris being reported, which is kind of being scattered about the I-65 area. So nonetheless, you know, sometimes, you know, it's meteorology. It's a science, but it's an imperfect science. So it's really smart to always play it safe. You never say never when it comes to weather, and this is a perfect example of why that applies, because something that on radar doesn't look ultra strong, ultra concerning, obviously it's doing some damage, and this is one of those situations where we have the lavender or purple polygon, which is different than the red. The other polygons that are purple indicate radar is not confirming it. This is someone has eyeballs on it. There's ground truth. So this is an observed, confirmed tornado, which did some damage crossing over I-65 and Perry Crossing, but again, not seeing a really pronounced signature showing up on StormView 3D
and let's
or
go to
StormView
WeatherPix.
HD.
And I'm not trying to interrupt, Rick, but we have video here. Can we go to WeatherPix, guys? We've got video here of it crossing Perry Crossing. This is the tornado. So there you can see, guys, that's the tornado touchdown near Perry Crossing. Cody Monk just sent this to me. Here is the tornado touchdown near Perry Crossing, starting back at the beginning. And again, I apologize for the interruption, Rick, but you can see there is the funnel. That is the tornado touchdown. We've got this live on the air now for you. The tornado, the touchdown near Perry Crossing. No question, Rick, that is the tornado.
You got it.
You know, and we will find out the amount of damage it did. But number one, Cody, thank you for sending us this video. If you are safely able to get any video from these storms, I will say this, as I say this a lot, but you are our eyes on the ground. You know, somebody asked me yesterday if I wanted to get a ham radio operator's license because I could get reports from storms. And I will tell you, the first station I worked at, Lawton, Oklahoma, had my ham radio operator's license. In the day, it was the way that we could get warning or reports. The world's changed where we have you as our eyes out there, and you as our eyes out there are allowing us to see what's going on. And we have an army of storm spotters that are out there. On my Facebook page, 290,000 people. We've got reports. There are so many pictures coming in out of Sellersburg of that tornado. Wow. Unbelievable, these pictures that we're getting.
Feed?
Yeah, I'm going to grab this, Rick. There's a picture now out of Sellersburg. Looking north, there is no question that a tornado touched down. Absolutely no question. We've got video evidence to support it, and we're also now getting pictures to support what was a tornado touchdown. I'm trying to get the second one in here if I can.
And while you're doing that, Mark, I'll just mention that they have allowed all the warnings to expire. So let's pull up weather.
Wow.
No way.
So that's out of Sellersburg. Mark S. sent this in. Number one, thank you, guys. You are able to help us to confirm that there was a tornado touchdown. I think this is when that rotation came up a little bit. So this was from Mark S. out of the Sellersburg area. Again, I just want to say thank you to everybody out there. If you ever want to get information and pictures to me, follow me on Twitter. It's Mark Weinberg WX. Follow me on Facebook. It's Mark Weinberg on there, and you can get this information to us. And you guys are invaluable. Within 5 minutes of the touchdown, you've been able to show us this, which is very obviously a tornado on the ground. A couple of things I want to say on this, Rick. That base is fairly high. And that tornado had to dynamic pipe, is what we call it, get through quite a bit of atmosphere to get down to the ground. While it doesn't look like that was spinning that hard, maybe an EF1 tornado out of this, but you know, that is how we are able to confirm that we had a tornado touchdown. This is not a maybe, this is a tornado touchdown. Now from here, where do we go from here? What do we have in terms of severe weather that's left over in our area? And let's take a look at that. So we go to our viewing area. Things have changed.
A lot.
All tornado warnings have now been allowed to expire. It's 9:37. I'm just going to go over to the weather wall. We'll do just a brief look around what we have in our area. Just letting master control and production know we're going to wrap this up in a few moments here because all of the storms have basically collapsed. But obviously we're going to be going through in more detail on 11 o'clock. But as you look, we've got tornado warnings that barely missed the Jennings County area. Now, if you have friends near Cincinnati, let them know there's a tornado warned storm heading in their direction, and it's 1 and it's 2. And these storms are heading towards the Cincinnati metro area. I've got friends up there, so I can assure you that when I get done, I'll be texting them to let them know, be careful, tornado warned storms. I will say this, the data does indicate that those are going to stay together and go into the Cincinnati area. Now we're going to take this back to our viewing area and we're going to put this into motion. We still have this shower that is west of the Louisville area. We've got the one that produced the tornado near Perry Crossing, and you're like, Mark, that thing's grenaded. It's almost dead. You're right. There is almost nothing left of it. We've still got showers and thunderstorms trying to redevelop, and we've got some thunderstorms out to the west. Do I think we're done for the night? No. Will we be able to generate more tornadoes? This is the one point I want to make. We had a shower. It was 15,000 feet tall that generated a tornado. That is a real volume speaker to the fact that we have a lot of wind energy out there. And while there are clearly some things that are working against storm intensity, you cannot ignore the fact that the atmosphere remains volatile. And even if a storm peaks just for a little while, it does have the ability to generate tornadoes. We see more action going up and down near the Paducah area. We've got a tornado watch, Rick, in effect until 3 a.m. We now have damage that was reported in Sulphur and what is obviously a tornado that touched down near Perry Crossing. 2 areas where we know that at least a tornado or straight line winds did damage tonight. Rick and I are going to break here for a little while. Rick, the things that we do between now and 10 o'clock, new data coming in. You and I are going to be analyzing that data. From there, we're going to be assessing where the storms go tonight, who can see severe weather overnight. Beyond that, you and I are going to be looking at tomorrow. Tomorrow's atmosphere is more volatile, and that is a fact.
Yep.
It's going to come down to how much these storms explode tonight, where the boundary ends up, and that'll allow us to focus on where that severe weather threat is going to be focused for tomorrow on a day that shows more potential for some parts of our area than today. We're going to continue to keep an eye on these storms, keep it right here on WDRB for continuing weather updates.
Indiana has had Republican governors since Mitch Daniels served those 2 terms starting in 2005, followed by Mike Pence, and then the 2 terms for Eric Holcomb.
Yeah, we're back again. We've got more severe weather now that's moving into our area. We have another tornado warning until 11:45, so we'll let news know unless this tornado warning was canceled early. We're going to be on this one through the evening. These storms are going to continue to move across the area. Tornado watch is in effect until 3 a.m., and we've got now a tornado warning in the northern part of our area. And I want to say this, I say this all the time. You know what, if you're in the most populous county in our area, or if you're in the county that has the least population, a tornado warning is a tornado warning, and we're going to stay with every one of these counties, and we hope that by our actions we improve that everybody is important. It is not just whether these are hitting Louisville. So the tornado warning right now is in effect for the northern part of Lawrence County. This one's going to go just north of Bedford. We need to watch this one closely. Here's the information right now on this tornado warning. So tornado warning for Lawrence County until 11:45. Ultimately, if this one in particular holds together, it is going to be making a march eventually towards also the northern part of Jackson County. And this one could conceivably, if it makes any right move, affect the Brownstown area. So there are a number of things that we need to be watching out as these storms move across the area. So now we know that earlier on tonight we saw a tornado touchdown. This one was near Perry Crossing in Clark County. We know it's a video and radar confirmed tornado. So this one happened with 15,000-foot heights. This is a stronger storm. This one's going to be in the Marshall area in Lawrence County 16 minutes from now, 21 minutes from now in the Coveyville area, Shawswick 24 minutes from now, and Pleasant Run, it'll be 27 minutes from now. Rick, you've been analyzing these storms on Storm View 3D all night. In terms of rotation, there's two things I would note on this. The rotation is stronger than some of the storms that had a tornado warning on it earlier. It's taller. It has notable rotation. However, this is a part of our viewing area where the radar is looking quite high up. And this creates a little bit of a challenge. When we're looking at this tornado that was produced in Perry Crossing, we're looking at about 1,600 feet above the ground. What's the difference here? How high are we looking at in this storm?
So as opposed to like the 1,600, we're looking at 4,200 feet up in the air, which means we're not able to sample the lower part of the storm, which is where the tornado would be, seeing that mid-level rotation a little bit more. So obviously this is going to be really tough to say without some sort of certainty exactly what's going on for now. And there is rotation, there's no doubt about it. That's why the warning has been issued by the National Weather Service. So what we're going to do is analyze going through the layers, see where the storm is going, and if it gets any stronger or any weaker. For now, if you're inside that red box, you know what you need to do. You need to get downstairs, you need to get in the center part of your house, away from the windows, and stay there until you get the all clear. Honestly, the way today is unfolded, we saw a shower without lightning produce a very thin stovepipe-like tornado. So basically, I mean, anything's possible in the environment that we have right now since all the severe weather parameters are so high. So this is one of those nights where it's better to be safe than be sorry, and I cannot emphasize that enough. So if you are in Lawrence County, the northern edge, I need you to be in your safe place immediately. We've seen rotation. It looks like it's getting a little stronger now in the latest scan mark, but again, we're still looking pretty high up into the top of the storm.
That's a challenge. I mean, that is a real challenge that is inevitable. I mean, there is no real solution around this. Are we seeing anything at this point? Remember, we can go beyond just looking at rotation. We have the ability to see whether there is a tornado that could be touching down. Obviously, the initial thing there that's going to jump out at you is west of Owensburg. There's that blue circle. Rick, let's identify if that's underneath where it's raining. Okay, so that's not a concern.
Correct.
So we would be looking just south of Owensburg. Let's go back real briefly again and see. You know, south of there, that is a little bit unnerving.
It does line up with the couplet. Let me just turn on NROD to make sure.
Green means go. We're close.
Very close.
We're close, but you know, remember, we're looking 4,200 feet above the ground, so this creates some complexity in terms of whether we're talking about near ground rotation or if it's slightly elevated. You know, like you said, Rick, the way that today has gone already, we saw storms that were really short. How high is this one? We saw a storm at about 15,000 feet produce a tornado.
Yeah, this one's a big bad boy. This one is about 42,000 feet up in the atmosphere, and you have to think of it like this. The taller the storm, the stronger it is. And I do want to just kind of go backwards really quick and just tell you about our radar system. Now, we have these strategically scattered throughout the country. Obviously, just like cell towers, there's going to be some gaps, and there will be areas where you get poor cell service. The same kind of applies to tornadoes, and anywhere between Louisville and Indy, there's an overlap, and this is one of those zones where it is a lot harder to identify that rotation which goes all the way down to the surface, simply because of the way radar works. We start the beam, it's aimed about a ½ inch up, and then it shoots out, and the reason we do that is so the beam doesn't hit trees or buildings. We need to do that, but obviously, the farther you get from the actual radar site itself, the more muddy some of the data and information can be. So right now, still a strong storm. It has come down just a tad. The latest scan of the Echo Tops, which shows us how tall those storms are, have come down, but not by much. We're talking about rather than 41,000 feet. I want to go back over to rotation, still seeing that rotation just to the east of Owensburg. And it
Well,
looks a
it's
little
come
better
up.
than
It actually has come
looks
up.
better than it has. Absolutely.
So on the right side of that, I'm going to guess we're looking at around 70 knots.
62 is what I'm seeing.
Okay, other side is only about 10-ish. I mean, they don't look super strong.
Yeah,
so we've
about
got about
8,
80
10.
miles an hour rotation. That said, 80 mile an hour rotation produced a EF1, EF0 tornado. We don't know until it's inspected, but did produce a tornado earlier. So this rotation is on par. That said, it is higher up, but this is on par with some of what we saw earlier. Now, I'm going to open up our camera because I'm kind of curious here. Seymour is going to be able to have some sense of a look at this storm, so it's kind of worth noting, is it showing lightning or not? I'm going to make sure that we get our Seymour camera and move it off to the west. But if you're west of the Ulitic area, close to Owensburg, and you can see it just crossed the county line. So we're in what we refer to as sales mode. Sales mode allows us to get rapid radar updates, and these updates come in approximately every 2.5 to 3 minutes, and you can imagine if it's a long level or long rotation that's been going on for a while, that rotation in that 3-minute period is probably not going to change a superb amount. However, if you have something that is quickly spinning and intensifying, that is a little bit different in terms of how that works. So this is something that we're going to continue to be watching. That is our Seymour camera that is within our area. Again, that is the Seymour camera that was within our area. You saw on the side there. We're not looking at a ton of lightning on that. But Rick, that rotation that's coming across the county line is getting dangerously close to what our threshold would be. This very easily could drop a quick tornado. And this rotation is not something that's a one-scan thing. We've seen this rotation on here for a while.
Yeah, we've seen it move into the county, and it's now actually moving pretty rapidly across the county. Just to give you an idea of kind of where this exists, that's just north of the rotation is South Road 54. So this is going to travel east around 45 miles per hour, cross over 37. And now let's go back over to Storm View 3D so we can, or HD rather, so we can kind of see what's going on where. And Mark's going to travel to the wall and tell you exactly where these storms are going, and obviously give you a whole overview of what's going on right now.
And you know, I will say this, and Rick and I have talked extensively about this, but we need this line. And I know that's not what, it doesn't make sense a little, but we need this line. We need this line to get through our area. We need it to press southward tonight, and we need that low to go travel a little bit further south of our area tomorrow. I'm going to tell you something. If the warm front got hung up, let's say near Louisville, we will have a serious problem tomorrow. So we need these storms to make a push south, and there may be a penalty to pay for that overnight. This is our lone tornado warning, and let's actually, Rick, before we spend too tight of a zoom, I do want to show perspective of what's going on in the rest of our area, because I want to see, are we talking about anything else? So we do have storms that are trying to form in an area from Carbondale that extends through around Evansville and into our area. Some of the data shows that in the next 2 hours, this would start to ignite. The data has not done a great job tonight. It just simply hasn't. But at least the fact that there's some reflection of thunderstorms here means we do need to watch it. Back to our lone tornado warned storm right now, which is in the northern part of Jennings County. County seat, in Lawrence County. County seat here is Bedford. Right here. Mitchell also notably populated. The area of rotation, and I want to scope here, this is Indiana 54, and I want to scope and see where that rotation is. So this is coming right across Indiana 54 here. Rick, do you know what the junction is? I know that you've got 3D. Do you know what the junction is on these two roads between 54, Second Road?
That's 37.
37 and 54 junction is where the rotation is going. So movement on this is going to be taking it towards Marshall, which would make the rotation going slightly north of Bedford. Do you let your guard down in Bedford? No, but you're not in the tornado warning right now. Do I think you could get in the tornado warning? I think it's going to remain slightly to your north. But we're talking about the Dark Hollow area about 9 minutes from now, 12 minutes from now in the Marshall area, Shawswick 19 minutes from now, and 23 minutes from now in the Pleasant Run area. What I'd also like to do here is go back to Storm View 3D and inspect. Are we seeing something in there that shows debris? I say this a lot, but there's two ways that we assess. We assess if it's a tornado doing damage or is it a tornado possible. So there are things that we see here. This hole right here obviously jumps out at you, and what we're going to do here is look, is this under an area of rain? Because if it is, we would be very concerned. So let's go back briefly over to that, Rick. I think that's north of the hook, so that doesn't appear that that could be. So if there was an area of rotation that confirmed a tornado on the ground, we don't see that. That area of rotation right now, there's the new tornado warning here. It just kind of was shrunk down just a little bit. And really the reason that we do this sometimes is that we can hone in on very specific areas. It's obvious, you know, if you're in, you know, an area that, let's say 7 miles south of the rotation, we don't want to alert you and tell you tornado unless we're really concerned about that area. So again, on the basic update here, does not include the Bedford area. Rick, in terms of rotation, we noted about 80 miles an hour on the last scan. I see you looking at specific gates. What are you seeing in terms of that rotation? Again, at about 4,000.
We've got a 53 on the inbound.
Okay.
And about 9 on the outbound.
Okay, so we've gone from 80 now back to around 60 at 4,000 feet above the ground. Rick, let's just look at normalized rotation here briefly because I would assume that we're all blue right now. Well, we've got a little bit of a pop there. So that area of rotation is going to go about 3 miles north of the Ulitic area. And again, it does look a little bit better here in terms of looking at normalized rotation. And what that may mean is that aloft the rotation just simply is a little bit better. At the surface, we're looking at around 60 in terms of the rotation on that. Marshall, you need to be taking your tornado safety precautions right now. If you are in the Marshall area, go ahead and take your tornado safety precautions here immediately as that storm is about to move on top of you. Rotation area is going to be right over the Ulitic area through Marshall, Rick. And in the center part of the house, you've got to keep away from windows. You've got to be careful on this storm. It is close. Whether it produces a tornado or not, it's close.
I know, Mark, it's 11:23 at night. You know, if you have kids, I know they're probably fast asleep. The pet's probably sleeping on the couch. Well, you have to get the pet, you have to get the kids, the whole family together. And if you have a basement, that is the best place to be. But you need to be in your safe place regardless. This is one of those days, and it's been one of those storms that you never really want to second guess it. Just go to your safe place. I mean, I know it's an interruption for a half hour. You might be a little groggy, a little tired tomorrow. But if it means that you're safe and you know everyone around you safe, it is definitely worth that sacrifice. So please, if you're in Lawrence County, if you are in Marshall, Pleasant Run, Ulitic, you need to be in your safe place and just do it now. So calmly, quietly gather everyone and go to your safe place. This tornado warning does go until 11:45, and it does show decent amount of rotation. I know we're looking very high up in the atmosphere, but of the rotation so far, this has been one of the stronger ones, and that's just because we had a shower that didn't even have lightning produce a tornado in the Perry Crossing area. And looking at some of the damage right now, it looks to be an EF0 or EF1 simply because some of the peeling of the roof that we've seen. But the best part, no injuries.
Yeah, and you know, and when you looked into that neighborhood, I have to say, there were things that you can see in the construction. Being someone that surveys damage and has for a long time, you kind of learn what are fail points on structures. And Rick and I talk about this a lot. Rick went through his house because he and I just had conversations on what causes homes to fail and what are those points. And we saw very specifically on those homes that were damaged in Clark County that where the roof connects to the walls, it was strapped.
Right.
And those hurricane straps are super important. A fail point on almost every home would be the roof disconnecting. And what you saw on some of the homes in Clark County is they were peeled, but they weren't pulled. And that
Once you lose that roof, it's like House of Cards.
It really is.
Comes down.
So, you know, and I've told Rick this is a true story. I said, Rick, you need to do kind of a DIY on how to do that, because I know a lot of people in our area would be curious how to do that. And it is a I wouldn't say simple, because Rick can speak for this, but it is.
I'm lucky it didn't fall through into the, our bedroom. That's probably the truth of it.
I think the bigger concern is why you didn't wear a mask when you're up there with the fiberglass, but we're not really talking about that. It is a fail point of homes, and there are things that you can do. By the way, Nashville, also in Indiana, is an area of rotation. I think that this speaks to what we're going to be dealing with during the overnight hours, and that is potential for rotating thunderstorms and still potential for tornadoes. On a positive here, the rotation on StormView 3D has come down just a touch here with just one positive, but we're looking at still some of that rotation out there. It looks a little bit weaker, but it's about 4 miles north of the Ulitic area. We're looking about 4,000 to 6,000 feet above the ground, depending on your radar source or radar site. Other storms are starting to form a little bit south. I will say this. What happened a little bit earlier certainly makes me uneasy about tonight. And what I mean by that, It's hard not to be uneasy when you saw a storm that was only 15,000 feet drop a tornado. It's not like it might have dropped a tornado. It actually did drop a tornado. We have the video proof of that. So we obviously need to be very, very careful. North of the Ulichik area until 11:45, tornado warning is in effect. Let's go back and take a look at this from our camera in the Seymour area. I'm going to take a view of this from a couple different ways, and let me get the temperatures off there. But I'm going to view this. This is looking due west. And truthfully, there was a lightning strike. We're getting a little bit, I'm just going to pan because I know we also have storms to the north, and I just want to see what we've got out there as we move around. The storms have not been prolific lightning producers, but nonetheless, and you could see, there we go, some lightning as you look to the north of Seymour. A lot of lightning coming out of some of these storms. The storm that generated the tornado near the Perry Crossing area basically had no lightning. And it is a crazy feat that a storm without lightning can produce a tornado. And so, you know, this one is a little bit stronger. Rotation right now is right north of Ulichik. So what road are we about to cross on that, by the way, Rick? And I'm going to come back over to you on 3D.
That's going to be 37, Indiana 37.
So that's about to cross Indiana 37. If you have any friends here, I know this is rural Lawrence County, but again, you know, our rule is, and we are generally steadfast to this, that if there is a risk to life and property, we're going to stay with the storms.
Judah Logan Road is one in the path of rotation, so you have time to get to your safe place. County Road 12 West is another one, and the same applies to those of you. Obviously, you have less time on Old State Highway 37. You need to go there immediately. And if I can just find one more crossroad to give you, McFadden Ridge Road, another one. So, if, you know, if that sounds familiar.
It's right on the verge, though.
And the newest scan came in, it does show still, you know, like you said, it's just rotation that exists.
Let me come back over to you real quick, too, by the way.
There we go. We're triple boxing that, so it's not overly powerful, but again, enough that warrants the fact that, you know, you need to take action. You need to do it now.
And the one that produced the tornado in the Perry Crossing area, so we know that there was damage in Sulphur. We don't know what the damage was from. It could have been what we call a rear flank downdraft, and you're like, a rear flank what? So what that means is thunderstorms generate wind around them. And that wind will come down from aloft, hit the ground, wrap around the area of rotation. We don't know if that is where that came from. We don't know if it was a tornado damage. I will say this, that we know what produced in the Perry Crossing area. It was stronger than this. So the rotation is definitely coming down a little bit on this and maybe broadening out a little bit. But I do think it's worth noting that this is not something that we haven't seen today. We saw some of these storms weaken, come back up, weaken, come back up. And so this may just be a slight pulse down.
It's true.
And then it may try to make its run back up a little bit more intense here in the coming 15 minutes. We've got a tornado warning in effect until 11:45. I will say this, generally, the National Weather Service, Indy, is not as quick to pull warnings if the rotation comes down as Louisville sometimes is. And the second part to this is I don't think the Weather Service is going to be particularly fast to pull warnings tonight. And part of the reason is that there is a tremendous amount of wind energy out there. They just gave a status update on that. That's where we stand on that. I'm going to go back over to our other radar source, Rick, so you can briefly look at what the status was. But here's everything in motion. And so I want to say this one more time. We must get this line to move across our area tonight. We must get this line to move across our area tonight. If we do not, it will leave an effective boundary very close to Louisville tomorrow, which will be a focus to generate severe and potentially tornadoes tomorrow. If the boundary gets south of Louisville, we will be in better shape tomorrow. If the boundary does not get south of Louisville, we will have a significant problem tomorrow. Most of the data shows this goes into southern Kentucky and all the way even into conceivably Tennessee. But again, the data has not necessarily been great on a lot of these days, and today is one of those. Scope inside the storm shows the area of rotation right now is specifically between Marshall and Guthrie. The area of rotation, one might be able to argue, is a little bit weaker than it was earlier on in the cycle of the storm. But again, we have seen these things produce tornadoes and elevate in its intensity fairly quickly. On Storm View 3D, you know, I will say this. The rotation is not the same. It just is not. That rotation looks broad, which means that it's a little bit more diffuse and a little bit wider. It's not pinched as tightly. and the magnitude or intensity of that rotation, Rick, definitely is coming down. That's a positive sign. I mean, I'm not saying something that we don't want to see, but there's definitely a notable trend downward. That is not really even gate-to-gate shear anymore, which means it's spread out.
You're absolutely right. It is spreading out, and on top of that, looking at reflectivity, it doesn't have the same structure it once did. Before, we had a little bit of a tail trying to form. This one obviously still has a little bit of a dog tail, a little appendage on the southern side, but it doesn't have the same signature that we once saw. So again, positive signs, but not signs that would insinuate you should let your guard down, because this is still a warning that goes until 11:45 that you need to take seriously. So we're still watching this, obviously, for those of you in Lawrence County, and we're not going to let our guard down either. This is one of those nights where, Mark can tell you, we stay late, watch the storms, make sure they travel through, and basically, as they do, we're watching every single location. Doesn't matter where you live in our area, we have our eyes on you, and we're making sure that you get through the night safe and sound. And at night, it's so much harder. I know when people are asleep, you know, it's such a big distraction, and it's basically an inconvenience to get out of your bed and to move to your safe place, and just for a tornado warning that's possible, not something that's set in stone. But these are the ones you don't regret, simply because the atmosphere is charged up, a lot of energy. You probably hear the rumbles of thunder, see the flashes of lightning, and with this tornado warning ongoing in Lawrence County, you know, just the rule of thumb is just, you know, play it safe. There's really no harm or no penalty to you getting out of bed, going to your safe place, and then 20 minutes later, going back, you'll fall back to sleep, hopefully. So this is one of those situations where I just want you to play it safe. Tornado warning continues, and Mark, you're looking at some of the rotation inside of there, and like you analyzed before, it doesn't look that tight, but we still have the greens and the reds very close to one another.
Yeah, you know, what's happened here in the evolution of this is that it's expanded. The rotation has broadened a little bit and weakened some. Tornado warning goes until 11:45, and we're going to stay with the storm as long as there's a tornado warning. I'll say this again. You know, I think that a lot of times, I think that people feel like if a tornado is affecting Louisville, we go with it. If it's not affecting Louisville, we don't. I will tell you that that is not my concept of how we cover weather, and it will never be the way that our team covers weather. If there's a threat to life and property, it doesn't matter if it's a threat to 50 people or 1 million people in the Louisville metro area. It really doesn't. This is all about protecting life and property. And I can tell you that our station supports us in our philosophy of making sure we cover when this happens. That said, the tornado warnings until 11:45. If the Weather Service decides to lift, we'll go back to programming. If they don't, we're going to stay with this. There is an area of rotation also on the storm near Columbus, not tornado warned. What I will say in the longer term to this whole thing is that the data is still consistent in lining out. And I want to note that now we have a severe thunderstorm warning near Carbondale. All of this, the data shows within the next 3 hours where we'll start to progress across our area. If you're asking me, Mark, do I think that we're done with tornado warnings for the night if this tornado warning expires? I'm going to tell you what I told you earlier, and I don't think we are. The data still continues to show potential rotation swaths coming across our area overnight tonight. And so it's very likely that you're going to see me for a while, and it's very likely that you'll see Jude at some point during the overnight hours as we watch. The data does indicate that these storms might be able to generate some type of rotation and even potentially tornadoes in our northeastern counties. And then we're going to see there is an arc of storms that go from Carbondale towards around Tell City. I said this earlier. The atmosphere is highly supportive of rotating thunderstorms. The one caveat to this whole thing is our fuel is still very high. We have a really significant amount of rotation in the atmosphere. That said, we don't have as much swing or turning in those winds as we go upward at night right now. So hopefully this would keep it as rotating thunderstorms and not confirmed tornadoes. But all that said, there are parameters that still support severe and rotating thunderstorms, which can and do produce tornadoes. This is the tornado warned storm. And Rick, let's go back a little bit, because I do think sometimes seeing the evolution of a thunderstorm can help you to understand a little bit of what has happened. And you can see that the storm had this hook on the tail of it as it came across into the Lawrence County area. And then as we start to move forward, we see this becoming more of just kind of flat mess. And part of the reason I believe this is happening, from the analysis side, is this storm, the blow-off on this storm is hitting the storm that's near Nashville, Indiana. And so it's kind of like if you were to go out to your car while it's running and plug the exhaust, the car is going to shut off. It literally must expel those exhaust fumes. And in this, the thunderstorm must have an exhaust aloft, or all that air rising will seed itself. And what I mean by that is if you cannot get it out aloft, it will reseed and rain down into the storm and collapse the updraft. This is a science and fact of storms. So if you reseed that thunderstorm, and that is what is likely happening here, at some point you're going to collapse the thunderstorm or weaken it. And that's the setting we have here. And then you're like, okay, Mark, if that logic was to hold, then these storms are all lined up together. You got it. So this is the hope that since they're lining up together, it would somewhat minimize the severe potential, but we still need to watch again that line near Carbondale is not lined up. These are more individual right now, and we're going to need to watch all of this as it crosses our area. You know, it has been a busy night, Rick. I think we both kind of looked at each other. The rotation came up so quickly west of Perry Crossing. We knew that we had a situation that we could produce a tornado, but there is still something that's jarring about the fact that a storm doesn't, it's not even close to airplane height. It was so short that a plane that is cruising at 30,000 feet would just go over that thing and look down and be like, I mean, it didn't even have lightning on it.
I know.
And yet it dropped a confirmed tornado. I don't know if you've seen the video. I'm sure we've got a million here. Let me see if I can pull one real quickly just to show you.
And just a quick shout out to everyone who captured those videos. I mean,
there you go.
Doing it safely is the most important. There it is right there.
And so that was the tornado out of Perry Crossing earlier. The interesting thing about this is you notice on the right you can see a subvortice that is spinning around the pairing, and you can very clearly see there are multiple small vortices in there. The details of these tornadoes at close range are just stunning. And this is another one from Laura Froman. And again, you can see on the right there, those subvortices, those smaller little rotations that are angling around this. It is remarkable to see everything that occurred earlier tonight. Tornado warning remains still in effect right now. Tornado warning is in effect for our area for Lawrence County until 11:45. I'm going to check on the Weather Service chat here just to see if they've given any status on this. So we have multiple Weather Service offices that serve our area. We have in the northern part of our area, so this would be Lawrence, Jackson, and Jennings, which is where this is. That is serviced by the Indy office. Carroll County is serviced by Cincinnati, and then the rest of our area is serviced by the National Weather Service, Louisville. So again, we chat and interact with the Weather Service and get a sense of where they stand on this. And I will say that as it stands right now, the Weather Service has said they do not plan a downstream warning. And I think that my opinion is if this holds as it is, I don't think a downstream warning would be justified. What is a downstream warning? It means are they going to warn beyond where we are? Scoping inside this, Rick, you and I have looked at it through its cycle. I don't even think there's rotation in there anymore.
No.
This thing is, its best days may be behind it, at least for now. There's very minimal rotation. There's a little bit. East of Marshall, I'll give you kind of a pinpoint here. That's it. But this is continuing to broadly weaken out. Tornado warning remains in effect until 11:45. The Weather Service releases the tornado warning. We'll return you back to programming. Actually, we may stay for just a little bit. But you know, I think I speak for you on this one, Rick. Our voices are going to still need a little bit of a break. I'll show you this real quickly since you're on with us. So you may know or may not know that when we do severe thunderstorm cut-ins, you may see this on the side here. So what is this? So this is the side view of what we're doing. If you ever go onto my Facebook page, and I'm just Mark Weinberg, remember Mark with a C, we always roll out Facebook Live videos, and I can talk to you and my group that's on Facebook right now until you guys can see me on here, and then you can see see me on TV. And so what this always is a behind the scenes of what we're doing. We know that there's potential when there's tornado warnings for power to go out. And so we need to be able to get and talk with you in multiple different ways. It's also really important to note that if there was a tornado that touched down and you are going into your safe spot, what do you do? What do you do if the power goes out and you can't hear? Well, this is part of what we do. Download the WDRB news app, download WDRB Plus. And Rick, you know, you and I talk about this not just as meteorologists that talk on TV. We tell our families this.
Right.
I mean, you've got to know what's going on. And it's you can just grab your phone, go in your tornado safe spot, open us up on WDRB Plus or the WDRB app, or you can go onto our website and you can watch when you're in your safe spot. And we can go through this stuff together. And that is something that's really important. You and I have a lot of experience walking through tornadoes together. Too much this year.
I mean, this spring has just been relentless. I just feel like
crazy.
we've been hit multiple times. I mean, obviously nothing like what they've experienced out to the west, but we had the Milton tornado. We saw the one today. What was the other one that the Prospect?
I mean, Jeff, Buckner, Jericho. I mean, it's been a tough year. In April, you know, you may not know this. April was the second most active tornado confirms in the United States in our tornado record. You may not know. You may know what the record is. I do know that we probably have some weather geeks out there that will remember.
Oh, yeah.
2011. 2011 is what's referred to as the second super outbreak, and 2011 had an obscene number of tornadoes across the U.S. And this year in April is second only to that. Tornado Alley this year reminded everybody who Tornado Alley is.
I mean, absolutely. This is one of those years, and just looking at, I mean, the storms that would go up to our west, the dry line initiating, and just seeing these supercells all by themselves, that's the most concerning thing. We're looking at storms that have merged together, but when you have an individual supercell that it's all by itself, that rotating updraft, that promotes the hail, that gives you the possibility for a tornado. So these supercellular storms, I mean, just the structure alone is just mind-boggling to see these storms. I hate to see the destruction, obviously. That's the worst part about it. But obviously tonight we're seeing more of these storms merge, come together. And it does look like some of the high-resolution data has that happening in the next couple of hours, where they sort of connect the storms to the north and south and then begin progress south. But as you mentioned, how far south those storms go will mean everything, and I mean everything, to how tomorrow's unfold. I know, because there's still so many outcomes possible. I mean, you're talking about if that boundary sets up a couple counties south, 20, 25 miles, that's going to mean all the difference.
So that's a key ingredient here. Again, I know that this may sound somewhat weird, but we want these storms to move across our area tonight. We need them to get to Tennessee. If they can get to Tennessee, Southern Indiana, you're going to be probably out of the more significant severe threat. Louisville's going to be borderline, but, you know, we really would still need to watch Litchfield, Caneyville, Munfordville, Greensburg. We'd need to watch Columbia. We would need to watch Horse Cave, Southward, Mammoth Cave, Bowling Green, Land Between the Lakes, Hopkinsville. You know, I will tell you this. I think in southern Kentucky, northwards through probably, or southward through Tennessee, tomorrow's going to be a severe weather event. It's going to generate a lot of severe, and that is a concern. Just so production knows, 30 more seconds here on the warning. The warning has been expired from the National Weather Service. Rick, let's just do a quick walk across the area.
Sure.
Just so we can see again what's going on. I'm going to head over to the weather wall here, guys, and follow me over there, and we'll take a look at what we have. Tornado warning will be allowed to expire in 12 seconds. Unless a new tornado warning is issued, we'll go back to programming, just so you know. Again, you guys saw, you can always follow us in our Facebook Live. We'll be behind the scenes. The world's changed. We have multiple ways to reach out and discuss and talk, and some are like this on TV where you get the polished, some are behind the scenes. The world's changed. It's made it easier for us to get to you in many different ways. So beyond what we have right now, we've got a line of thunderstorms right now that's severe near Columbus. And so I want to speak to you in Jennings County. If you're in North Vernon, be aware this line has showed some area of rotation. It is marching towards the southeast, east-southeast, at around 30-40 miles an hour. So this is going to affect ultimately just north of Seymour. We have seen prolific lightning on our cameras, and then it's ultimately going to go towards Geneva and then north of North Vernon. If you're in this area, be aware some 60-mile-an-hour winds are going to be possible. This, I don't think is show over yet for what's near Pleasant Run. You can see there's a little bit of an uptick of lightning here. We may still see warnings for this area. That said, we're not looking at anything in terms of hail, which I think is a really positive. Because if these storms were really penetrating deep into the atmosphere and taking advantage of the fuel, we'd have large hail. Beyond this, as we take a wide perspective, we can see that there are showers that have generated west of Louisville. This one's going to be near the Hardinsburg area. This area that is near Vincennes is ultimately going to make its march towards Louisville. So Louisville still may get another piece of action here. And then what's Carbondale extending southward through around the Hardinsburg area. As I noted, again, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but if you want tomorrow to not be as bad, then you want this line of thunderstorms to move across our area. If it does not, and it does not reside in central Tennessee to start tomorrow, be aware tomorrow will be a serious severe weather day for our area. No tornado warnings in effect. It's 11:46. We have had confirmed damage thus far on a tornado that touched down in Clark County near the Perry Crossing area. 8 homes per Clark County EMA with damage. We know that there was some damage in Sulphur earlier. We don't know if that was caused by severe winds or by a tornado. All of that will be found out in the coming days. Whether the Weather Service surveys tomorrow or the next day is going to depend on severe weather.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
So we will know all of this. And if you ever see the Weather Service on Twitter, I know that they're on there pretty actively. John Gordon's on there. I know in the last one he worked so hard, and I know his group works really hard to get those surveys done out there. And it is a weather enterprise we speak of. It's not just Rick and I and the WDRB weather team. We all are part of this, trying to get information out there and make sure that you know what to expect. 11:47, no tornado warnings. Tornado watch remains in effect through 3 a.m. Keep it right here on WDRB for continuing weather updates.
I'd like to tell you why I should be chosen to